What's the closest you've come to dying in your life? Not safe for work? Please do like, share, and subscribe. Crashed my motorcycle and bounced into the oncoming lane. Luckily, the oncoming dump truck had really good brakes, no kidding. Where I stopped and where he stopped, the front left tire was less than 2 feet from running right over the middle of me. That would have been an unpleasant way to go. Street parking on a busy street. I must have been about 19 or 20. I was in the back seat of my brother's two-door car while my mom was inside the house to visit my grandfather and uncle. I got out because she was taking too long. A couple of minutes later, there was a loud crash out front. My brother's car was on the curb of the outside seating area of the restaurant next door. A drunk driver had hit my brother's car, and had it not been for his car, those people sitting there would have been badly injured. Also, in that same house, my cousin lined up a row of unlit matches under my mom and I had shared a bedroom door one night. My mother asked her to move out a day later. Back when I lived in Mexico, when I was 15 or so, there was a time when it rained pretty badly. I was alone in the house as my brother and mother were in the United States to buy a few things. The rain was so bad that it flooded the entire neighborhood. It has never been that bad, and I had no choice but to carry my puppy and abandon the house. When I went outside, it was like a river. There had been floods, but that was bad. The water almost reached my chest, and the current was so strong that I almost got carried away. It didn't help because I was carrying the puppy with my other arm. Somehow, I managed to make it about 3 blocks south, in which there was a hill. Me and my puppy were invited to stay over at a house up there, something everyone was doing as I wasn't the only one in trouble. When I went back to the house the next day, my brother and mother were there, and the house was ruined. Walls collapsed, furniture destroyed, and water up about 2 feet high. Luckily, no one was inside then, and I don't know of anyone that was severely injured, which is good. And luckily, the Mexican government gave every affected household a new house. It turns out that the reason the flood was that bad was because a dam broke, and it caused a sudden flow of water. That's the closest I've come to dying, and it was terrifying, but I'm just glad I was able to keep my composure the whole time. Got robbed when I was getting off a bus for my backpack and my skateboard. Got sucker punched and stabbed in the head while they were cutting off my backpack. Didn't even take my wallet. Probably the time I was outside of a club in San Francisco and decided to defend a woman who was being attacked. Was able to injure him enough for him to run away, but 5 minutes later, he turned the corner with a gun pointed at us. I was sloshed and had no idea, but the woman I defended grabbed my arm and pulled me inside the club and slammed the door shut. We stayed long enough for the cops to come. Only street fight I've ever been in, and only one I'll ever be in. Even if you win, it's just not worth it. I ended up breaking my hand, punched with bad form, and the woman who was attacked had an injured neck for months, but we're alive. I was climbing up a brick-enclosed grill as a child by myself. We used to play on it all the time. I got to the top and a brick came loose. I ended up falling down and landing head first on the brick. It split my head wide open, and I would have bled to death if someone hadn't been walking down the sidewalk that knew my family. They picked me up and carried me down the road to my family, who then rushed me to the hospital. Still recovering from it. Car accident happened in August, business trip to Dallas, Texas. From what the police report said, the coworker driving me ran a red light. We were hit by a Sprinter van at 50 miles per hour and were slammed into the guardrail. Broke 7 ribs, collarbone, punctured lung, and fractured 2 vertebrae in my neck. Luckily, I'm going to make a full recovery, but I have another month in a neck brace. Everyone else involved had minor injuries. Dealing with workers' comp has been a nightmare. I was walking on some boulders at the end of the beach before I got hit by a rogue wave and rolled down sharp barnacles for about 10 seconds. I swam back to shore safely and went to the hospital. Luckily, I had no broken or fractured bones. Less than a week later, 2 guys got knocked down the exact same way, and one of them ended up dying. My brother used to have a 12-gauge shotgun that he would keep loaded and with the safety off in the corner of his room. Keeping your gun loaded and ready to go isn't an unheard of thing, but you should only be doing that when the weapon is stored in a safe or hidden compartment near your bed. So I obviously wasn't keen on him just having it propped up there. One day, my good friend came over to the house. He was never really raised around guns, so he was always intrigued by them. Well, this day he picked it up and pointed it right at my head. He was laughing and joking around. He thought it was cool. Well, as I stood there with the barrel at my head, I got the urge to duck immediately. When I did that, I screamed, "It's loaded, it's loaded." He looked like he saw a ghost and immediately broke down. He said he was fractions of seconds from pulling the trigger. He started crying and hugging me and proclaiming, I'm sorry, I had no idea." It was one of those things I laughed about in the moment because I was just 16 years old and felt invincible. It wasn't until I got older that it really started to haunt me. There's nights I lay in bed with chills thinking about how different everyone's life would have been had I not had that urge. Some really butterfly effect shit. Moral of the story is both parties were negligent in handling a firearm. My friend should have never pointed it at me, even if he knew it was unloaded, and my brother should have never left a loaded firearm unattended. Don't make the same mistake. When I was around 8 or so, I was walking home from school alone. I was about a couple of houses away. A truck suddenly pulled off the road in front of me. I was walking on the side of the road towards oncoming traffic, so this person had to cross the lane of traffic to do so. The door opened and paused. All I saw was an arm with a glove on. Fight or flight kicked in, and I immediately yelled, "Hi, Mom," and started to wave. Now, I was a latchkey kid. There was no way my mom was home. As I walked past, I started to then run in a dead sprint. I was about 2 houses away. The door suddenly shut. The truck then sped off. To this day, had I not yelled, I know I would have been on a milk carton or some pedo psychopath's toy. Heading home by myself from a softball game late one night. Lights turn green for me to go, and I hear a voice that said, "Wait." I freeze because it freaked me out, and next thing I know, a dump truck blows through the red light and is getting chased by cops. Would have hit me on the driver's side and may have killed me with how fast he was going. I am currently in the possession of a very large thyroid cyst that is within a year or two of destroying everything in my throat. I'm meeting with a surgeon to discuss the results of the CAT scan in the 2 weeks so we can schedule a surgery date. Prior to this, about a dozen years ago, I was taking my wife and a friend up to a small town for a week-long medieval reenactment group, took a corner very quickly on the highway, and nearly crashed headlong into another truck and flew off a 50-foot cliff all at once. While I don't remember this one directly, according to my parents, when I was 2 years old, I nearly drowned after a bad boating accident and a quick misjudgment by my dad that he could get me to the surface faster than my life jacket by throwing me upwards in the water instead of letting me float up. He apparently took me under and tried to chuck me to the surface. I came up blue and traumatized by water for a good while after. I almost jumped off the balcony of my cruise ship room. I have a lot of issues with my mom. She always made it very obvious that she enjoyed being around my friends more than me. The entire cruise, my mom and friend hung out the entire time without me. What did it for me was I woke up and they came back and were like, "Oh, we just went to breakfast. I didn't think you'd want to come. Didn't want to wait for you to get ready either, so we just went without you." I was just so overboard with emotions and so upset. I was 16 at the time. It was nighttime, I think, and I remember crying and threw my legs over the balcony and thought, you know what? I guarantee if I were to do this, she wouldn't even shed a tear. Which she has told me before, that if I were to die, she wouldn't go to my funeral. I was ready to jump, but then I thought, if I didn't die on impact, I'd be floating in the water for days before I died of exposure, and that sounds not fucking awful. So, I threw my legs back over and cried in bed. When my mom came back into the room, she called me a dramatic bitch. Didn't ask why I was crying, didn't tell her what I had almost done. I've never told anyone this before. I'm sorry. When I was young, my family went snorkeling. I got bored and got back into the little boat we came out on. Well, the anchor got untied somehow and ended up drifting away. I tried to start the engine, but must have flooded it in my panic. The boat was getting very close to this sharp, rocky outcrop, and if it had hit it, I would have died. Luckily, they noticed in time and brought the sailboat close enough to pull me in. I drove through a school shooting without realizing it. Gunshots are normal around here, so I didn't really think much of it, except I should probably leave. I was at a stoplight, and I hear gunshots coming from a couple cars behind me, so I go around the car in front of me and the people running in the street and drive off. Next day, I hear about the shooting and that people died, and the description of the vehicle. I look at the video on the news, and there I am, a couple cars ahead. They were shooting right past me. Bad aim is all it would have taken. I was walking on the train tracks. It was the shortest way to the station, as it took 3 times less time. Anyway, me and my friend are walking when we see the train go by. We think nothing of it, as we thought that we are safe. Little did we know at the time The trains arrive at both stations around the same time. So no less than 4 minutes later, the train comes our way. We don't freak out at first because we can just walk down the cliff, but we didn't pay attention to where we were. We were on a tiny bridge with a little stream at the bottom, around 4 meters drop, and concrete around it, so we couldn't jump or walk down. Now we start running on the scorching and the glass shard-filled walkway. Mind you, it's over 30 degrees Celsius and we're barefoot. Anyway, we managed to barely run to a little staircase system, and we just jumped down maybe 35 centimeters and duck down and cover our ears. The train is now going past us. We're 35 centimeters lower than it and around 50 centimeters from it. I could have reached my arm out and I would have touched it. The noise was deafening. The howling pain and screech of it was unbearable. Anyway, we took the long way back. TLDR was almost hit by a train while having no shoes on in order to save time. Got bloody feet from glass shards. Wear shoes.